Hello and welcome to the Biological Resources Information Program for Caltrans contract number 08-1G8204. This presentation is provided by Alluvian Biological Consulting. This training has four broad objectives. Hopefully by the end of this presentation you'll be familiar with all four of these points. First, we're going to cover the definition and implications of take. And then we'll move on to what your responsibilities are if you encounter a regulated species. We'll have a brief introduction to the protected species associated with this project, and then we'll go over some general mitigation measures that need to be followed in order to prevent any incidents of take. So let's talk a little bit about take. Take is a very broadly defined term. California has a different definition for it than the federal government does, but they're both very similar. So for the federal definition, take means to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. California's definition is to hunt, pursue, catch, capture, or kill, or attempt to do any such actions. They're very, very similar, and they both mean pretty much the same thing. Anything that constitutes harassment or more is going to qualify as take. And the reason that it's important for you to know what take is because take of listed or regulated species can carry some pretty hefty penalties. Criminal penalties can go as high as $50,000 and up to a year in jail time in some instances. And civil penalties can get almost as high as the criminal penalties financially. So it's incredibly important that you know what take is and you avoid take as much as you possibly can so you can avoid these penalties. So before I introduce you to some of these listed and regulated species that we might encounter on the project, the first thing we need to go over is what your responsibilities are if you see one of these species. First and foremost, do not touch or approach the listed or regulated species. Can't stress that enough. Second thing on the list, if the species is in the immediate project area and is at risk of being injured or killed, you need to stop work immediately. What needs to happen then is you need to notify the designated biologist or the biological monitor. If one of us isn't there, if the monitor is not present, you need to contact Alluvian Biological Consulting directly. The phone number is in each of your books, and it's here on the presentation. The principal biologist on this project is Gennaro Lockhart. Only a qualified and permitted biologist can handle and move regulated species from the project site. So now let's look at the listed and regulated species that may occur on or near the project site. NEVIN'S barberry is an evergreen, drought-tolerant shrub. It grows up to 6 feet tall and 6 feet wide. The species forms dense mounds of prickly gray foliage and produces bright yellow flowers on its branch tips from March through May. Later in the season, the plant produces scarlet red berries. NEVIN'S barberry is endemic to California, found primarily in riparian and coastal sage scrub habitats throughout the southern regions of the state. This species has been extirpated from much of its native range, with the remaining populations primarily found on private land. San Diego ambrosia is a semi-evergreen, drought-tolerant ground cover plant. It grows up to 1.5 feet tall. The leaves are gray-green, fuzzy, and divided into numerous minute lobes to give a feathery appearance. It produces short, gray-green flower clusters from April through October. However, this species rarely produces viable offspring from its seeds. Rather, this species reproduces primarily through its rhizome, creating patches of clonal groups. San Diego ambrosia is native to a small geographic area in Southern California and Baja California, occurring in Riverside County, south through West San Diego County. The species is found primarily on upper terraces of rivers and drainages. Santa Ana River woolly star is a drought-tolerant perennial plant, and it grows up to 30 inches tall. The plant has a white, woolly color with irregular divided leaves along its stem, and blue lavender flowers forming slender tubes that radiate open at the top. It blooms every year from late May to mid-August, with peak flowering in June. This plant is endemic to the Santa Ana River drainage in Southern California. It prefers sandy soils and areas with infrequent flooding. It is also a pioneer species, requiring freshly scoured and uninhabited soils to spread and grow. Mountain yellow-legged frog is a true frog with characteristic smooth skin and a narrow waist. Adults grow to 2 to 3 inches in length and are variable in color. They range from yellow to brown to olive and are heavily patterned with black and brown markings. This species is endemic to California and found only in mountain habitats at elevations greater than 1,000 feet in the southern Sierra Nevadas and southern California mountains. Mountain yellow-legged frogs are highly aquatic and typically found in close proximity to water. Reproduction for this species is closely tied to elevation. Frogs will breed soon after the ice melts, laying eggs in clusters beneath rocks in lakes or streams. For frogs at lower elevations, they'll typically breed sooner, while higher elevation frogs may wait until June or July for sufficient ice melt to occur for breeding. Tadpoles at high elevations, to compensate for this reduced growing period, may overwinter a season before fully metamorphosing. Southwestern willow flycatcher is a small flycatcher measuring 5 to 6 inches in length. Their plumage is usually olive green with 2 white wing bars on each side of their body. The species is difficult to distinguish from other co-occurring flycatcher species, but is differentiated by its distinct call and its close association with willow habitats. It is primarily found close to water bodies at high elevations, usually above 600 feet, throughout Southern California. Breeding takes place in late spring and early summer, and nests are built about 2 to 5 feet above the ground in low brush or scrub within willow habitat. Females incubate a clutch of up to 4 eggs for 12 to 13 days, and young fledge after about 13 to 14 days. Golden eagle is one of the largest birds in North America. Adults can reach lengths of over 2.5 feet with a 7-foot wingspan. Plumage is almost entirely brown with some gold sheen around the head and neck. They have broad wings and a small head relative to their body size. Golden eagles can be found throughout California. However, population densities are higher in the southern portion of the state. They prefer high elevation, open country with low and scattered vegetation. Nests are large and can be up to 9 feet in diameter and are usually constructed on cliffs or bluffs. However, they may be found in a variety of man-made structures that provide suitable views of the surrounding hunting grounds. Breeding takes place from late January through August. Clutch sizes range from 1 to 3 eggs, and they're incubated for approximately 44 days, and chicks fledge after 65 to 70 days. Least-Bell's vireo is a small songbird measuring 4 to 5 inches in length. This species is drably colored with few distinct markings, but may be identified by its characteristically rapid, warbling vocalizations. This subspecies of Bell's vireo is endemic to Southern California and northern Mexico. It can be found in riparian habitat, preferring areas with willow and low, dense vegetation. Breeding begins in late spring and early summer, and nests are placed in trees and shrubs and are constructed of a combination of plant fibers and spiderweb silk. Clutches of 3 to 5 eggs are incubated for a period of 14 days, and nestlings typically fledge after 11 to 12 days. California gnatcatcher is a small passerine bird measuring approximately 4 inches in length. Their plumage is gray over most of the body, with the exception of a black tail and males having a black cap. In California, this species can only be found in the narrow range of coastal sage scrub habitat through the counties of Los Angeles, San Bernardino, through San Diego counties. Nests are built in spring along the outer edges of sagebrush. Females lay 2 to 5 eggs, which they incubate for approximately 2 weeks, and the young fledge after 9 to 10 days. The San Bernardino kangaroo rat is a smaller, darker subspecies of the Merriam's kangaroo rat, measuring 4 inches in body length and 9 inches if including the tail length. Its fur is generally dusky brown with a faint yellow tinge. Kangaroo rats bear large hind limbs that allow them to hop and jump great distances. The San Bernardino kangaroo rat is found within a limited range of sage scrub habitat in Southern California. It inhabits areas with sandy soils and will construct burrows at the base of shrubs. These burrows might have 2 to 5 entrances and exit holes, and breeding takes place from December through early summer in these burrows. Females give birth to 1 to 5 young, which are weaned after approximately a month. The Stevens kangaroo rat, while slightly larger than its relative on the previous slide, is practically indistinguishable in behavior and appearance. For the purposes of this training, it's simply important to know that there are multiple protected species of kangaroo rats in the general vicinity of the project. Santa Ana sucker is a medium-sized fish measuring approximately 6 inches in total length. It bears a silvery underside with dark yellow back and sides, covered with dark splotches. The mouthparts are situated downward and can be extended to inhale and rasp algae and invertebrates from rocks and cobble. This species' native range spans watersheds throughout Southern California in the counties of Riverside, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and Orange. It typically inhabits streams that are up to 1 meter deep. Adults of this species rarely live more than 4 years, but they only breed in their second summer. Breeding takes place over gravel substrate with fertilized eggs settling into the tiny spaces between the pebbles. A female may deposit 16,000 eggs in a single spawning event. These eggs develop for approximately 36 hours before larvae emerge. This section applies to all of the bird species that has been previously covered and any other species covered under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, or California Department of Fish and Wildlife Fish and Game Code 3503. A variety of bird species have been found nesting in or immediately adjacent to Caltrans right-of-ways. Nest sites are often placed in crevices, cavities, seams, or weep holes within bridges. Other nests are constructed on open vertical cement surfaces on bridges. The species that utilize man-made structures as nest sites tend to be more tolerant of urban conditions. These conditions might be increased noise, light, vibration, or simply human presence. But they can nonetheless be sufficiently disturbed during construction or maintenance activities, enough to cause nest abandonment or inattentiveness, which would result in the death or loss of eggs or juveniles. Incubation and brood rearing require approximately 4 to 5 weeks for smaller birds, but can take up to 12 weeks for larger raptors. And this is why it's incredibly important that we get nest deterrents up on the project site and prevent nesting as soon and as often as possible. So now we're going to go over some of the species protection measures for this project. This won't be an exhaustive list of all of the species protection measures for this project, but just a summary of some of the important points. A full list of the species protection measures for this project can be found in your Biological Resources Information Program booklet, so please reference your booklet for the rest of those measures. If a listed or regulated species shows up on or near the project site, we'll need to set up a protective radius for it. The radius is a no-work buffer that needs to remain in place until the animal leaves the area. And for this project, all regulated species carry a radius of 100 feet unless otherwise noted in this table. There are several general protective measures that need to be followed on this project. I'll go over these quickly, but you should review these measures in your training materials. First of all wildlife should be allowed to leave the job site unharmed, and this includes any animals that don't carry state or federal protections. On top of this, to prevent wildlife entrapment on the project, all excavations, and this includes trenches, holes, and pits, as well as all pipes and hoses, need to be covered at the end of each workday. If covering an excavation is not practical, earthen or wooden escape ramps need to be installed every 15 feet along the exposed excavation. Additionally, all food-related waste generated on the site needs to be contained in sealed trash containers. These containers need to be removed from the site daily, and the reason for this is because food waste tends to attract wildlife, and wildlife on a project site could ultimately cause delays. The next 3 points will help avoid more indirect effects on wildlife. And starting with the environmentally sensitive areas. ESA fencing should be up to mark all of the sensitive areas near the project. No work is allowed in these areas, and if the ESA fencing is knocked over or damaged for any reason, it needs to be repaired immediately. Also, during construction operations, stockpiling of construction materials, portable equipment, vehicles, and supplies needs to be restricted to the designated construction staging areas. These areas must be located in upland habitat and may not cover riparian vegetation or leave material where it may be washed into a water body. And as always on projects like this, best management practices need to be employed in any instance where there's a risk of discharging sediment or hazardous materials into the soil or a nearby water body. All BMPs should be inspected immediately before and immediately after storms. Discharge of sediment into water bodies is strictly prohibited. So we'll finish up here with some important takeaways from this presentation. First of all, back to the beginning, do not touch or approach any regulated species. Please notify your biological monitor if you see a regulated species on the project. And again, active bird nests are most likely to be found from February 15th to August 31st during the nesting season. It's incredibly important that you stay within the designated construction zone and you use the designated staging areas for this project. And please report all incidents to the biological monitor or your supervisor. Again, no hazardous waste, pollutants, or debris should be allowed to enter a water body, and this goes hand in hand with maintaining BMPs on the project site to prevent erosion and sediment loss. Lastly, and most importantly, you and your company are wholly responsible for following the measures that are stated in not only this biological resource information video, but the permits and specifications for this project. I appreciate you following along with this presentation. If you have any questions about what's been covered in this presentation, your training materials, the permits, project specifications, please direct them to your on-site alluvian biologist.